the legend, Terry McGovern, whose career I could list, and we would be here the entire hour with me listing his IMDb page. But if you go all the way back, he was at THX 1138. Right. And so, and then as I was looking over your page, I noticed that it appears that you were in every single show of the 1980s.
Yes.
So Simon and Simon, Benson, Three's Company, A-Team, St. Elsewhere.
Well, it was a.
Let's get a little closer. Make sure you get a little closer in there.
No, we had legislative, Sacramento, and finally got a bill passed, so I had to be in everything that was produced in LA. Thank you.
Yeah, that's working together.
So I want to start with the question. We have Star Wars fans in the audience, right? Yeah. Do you know who came up with legendarily? Who came up with the word Wookiee? This guy. Can you tell us a little bit about how Wookiee? Where did Wookiee come from?
I have a very close friend named Bill Wookie. We were friends we met in the Army back in the early 70s. And when it came time to work on, I got to work on THX 1138. Yes? Familiar?
Yes. I'm fanboy.
Yeah, I'm the confessor. Take 3 red pills and see me tomorrow. Anyway, that was George's first film. And one day I was late for a session, and I said, he said, "Why are you late?" I said, I was actually in the reserves, and we were at a meeting. I said, well, I was with my friend here, Bill Wookie, and I indicated Bill had come in the studio with me, and that was it. I never would have given it a second thought. Then after the movie came out, he was interviewed in Rolling Stone, and he said, one of my voice actors gave me that name. He said, Terry McGovern, he said, yes, I ran over my pet Wookie. I don't know where he got this, but somehow in his brain it came out that way. And it was very nice of him to acknowledge that. It was not a lot of fun for my friend's sons for a while in school. They were the objects of scorn or ridicule. Wookie. Then, of course, they grew to be very proud of it. And that's the story. It's a real guy. And coincidentally, he's about 6'3" and has a lot of hair and kind of a wet-looking nose.
So he looked like me, but without a mask.
Yeah.
Okay. Greg Baldwin, of course, is you know him as Mako, or because he was able to take over for the amazing actor Mako Uematsu in the role of from Legend of Korra, Zyro, he was Aku. And your path to getting that voice to becoming it's not even villain. Villain's not the right word. The next version of Iroh and Aku was really interesting. Can you talk about how you got that role?
The internet says that I was his understudy, and I hate to, spoiler alert, sometimes the internet isn't right about things. I never had the privilege of meeting Mako. I got to meet his daughter and his grandson. But I never met him. I certainly wasn't his understudy, which I always thought was funny because an understudy is a theatrical convention. You can't go on to the show that night, somebody else goes on for you. And Mako and I physically are very, very different people. There's no way that I would ever have been Mako's understudy. But I was, from a very young age, I knew that I wanted to be an actor. And I was very much enamored of musical theater. And I would ask, from birthdays, Christmas, all I wanted was original cast recordings. For my 17th birthday, I got a record album from a show, the Sondheim show, called Pacific Overtures, which starred Mako. And man, I love this show. I could sing you the whole score right now if we had the time. And we'll tell you, all right, I will know it. But I listened to this so much that I would sing along with it. And 2006, flash forward, Mako sadly had passed away, and they were looking for someone that could sound like him. And I've literally been, unbeknownst to me, working on a Mako impression for 30 years.
Isn't that great?
And so that's how that happened. And I sometimes think, wow. Yeah, and when you get a little older, you can sort of look back at the string of things and how this led to that. And I think at the time it was just another album, and I probably got 3 or 4 or 5. I don't remember. What if they hadn't got me that album? You know, I thought, wow, you know, if I had never received that album, none of this would have happened to me, and it would probably be somebody else sitting here right now. So it's sort of interesting. I think there's a lyric in the show, Pacific Overtures, that Sondheim wrote, called "It's the ripple, not the stream," and that's sort of what it is. Stephen Sondheim writes a show. He puts Mako in it, and has no idea that I end up being one of the ripples. You know, this 17-year-old kid in Texas. Anyway, that's
Greg, pardon me for my ignorance. Did you just mention Stephen Sondheim?
I did mention Stephen Sondheim.
He wrote this musical?
He wrote Pacific Overtures. He did it too.
What is it called, please?
Pacific Overtures. It was
Wow.
It was really. I mean, what I loved about it, it was like nothing else. The musicals up to that point, except for Sondheim, had been pretty much boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl. This, man, the whole musical is done kabuki style and heavy makeup. And in kabuki style, all the women's roles are also played by men. Very, very Japanese. And it's about how the Americans came in 1853, and this previously alienated society was opened up. And as the show progresses, it becomes more and more Americanized. And actual women start appearing in the show, and the music becomes more Americanized. And not necessarily in a good way, which to me I thought was also interesting, because I think in the same decade they were doing George M. and these patriotic musicals, and here was this musical that was really dealing with geopolitics in a way that had not been addressed before. And anyway, you know, I'm a big fan. Quick story. I'm sorry I talked about it. I wanted to thank Stephen Sondheim, an actor, Albert Finney, whom I loved, and who was instrumental in me becoming an actor, died. And I was going, wow, I wish I had told him when he was alive. And my wife said, well, you know, Mako's not around, but Stephen Sondheim says you should write him a letter. So I did. I wrote him a letter telling him exactly how this all happened and thanking him for what he had done. And to my shock and amazement, about a month later, he wrote me back. And he said, you know, the letter said, Greg, I'm so happy to know that this show had such a salubrious effect on your life. And because he used the word salubrious, and I was, this is Stephen Sondheim. You know, this has got to be Stephen Sondheim. So there you have the story.
That's a great story.
That's cool.
All right, Joe, you have the unfortunate opportunity of following that.
Yeah, it's not going to be nearly as interesting a story, whatever.
Okay, I think we'll start off with the fact that you're an Air Force vet.
I am indeed.
You spent how many years in the Air Force?
10.
And as a pilot?
No, as an intelligence officer.
Okay, but you are a pilot, right?
I
Fly?
do fly, yeah, but only small, dangerous.
The best fun.
Yeah, small, dangerous aircraft.
The most fun. You're also an author.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about your book.
I kind of took my military experience and I wrote a series of books very loosely based on it, kind of like satirizing my military experience, called the Epic Failure Trilogy, which is like sci-fi military humor. People call it like a Terry Pratchett in space. That's the long line.
Okay. And it's a trilogy. How far along?
It is a trilogy. It was finished in 2019. There's audiobooks. I read them because I'm narcissistic. And yeah, they've been out for a long time now. I'm not working on anything right now, so I think it's a pause on writing for me. But turning out a couple novels is fun.
So I noticed if you look at his IMDb page, he had, I think I counted 21 roles since 2000.
It's been yeah.
There's a pandemic, right? It's not
Yeah.
easy to find work right now.
It's been odd. I'm actually relatively new to voice acting. I mean, compared to the rest of the table. I started in 2013 as like a corporate voice actor, and I didn't even get to LA until 2015. So I'm not that far into my career yet, but it's been a wild ride. It's been great.
So let's talk a little bit. We'll get your questions ready. Start thinking about what you want to ask, and we'll get them. And just a reminder, we need everybody to have masks on, please, if you can. Talk a little bit about voiceover right now. What are you doing? And because a lot of this stuff, you're not actually going into, if you're working now, you're not going into studios, you're doing it from home, right?
Yes.
Yeah, please, go ahead, Terry, why don't you start?
Well, I'm just agreeing. Home studios have been, they've saved the voice business and saved those who are producing. Like people who are making books and so on and so forth. That we can work right out of our houses. It's beautiful. You wear flip flops, shorts.
If you're lucky.
If you want to.
Yeah,
If you want to.
That's a formal day.
Yeah, and it's great fun. And I'm kind of I came up in radio. I did a lot of radio, and I've always been. I love microphones, just the design of them, and how they work. And so I now have a nice collection of my own, and I use different mics for different jobs. I just finished a book for Audible, and it was, I think it's going to be 7 hours. So you can imagine how many hours recording of that it took. And I can honestly sit here and say, I have no idea what it's about.
I understand you completely. I've done a lot of long form
Have you?
stuff. I've done like a lot of like corporate e-learning and stuff
That's
like that.
it, that's
And I'll
it.
get to the end of the thing and I just did like, 2 hours on fluid dynamics. And I'm like, I have no idea. I couldn't teach class on fluid dynamics. Like whatever.
Oh, I
it is.
should have done that.
Yeah.
I'm joking. Fluid dynamics. We got me beat. This is a business to business kind of. He's a motivational guy, and he's a very very smart man. But salespeople in those books, the way they're structured, they have a tendency to repeat and repeat. It's called the 2x4 effect. Hit you between the eyes with a 2x4 until you get it. And that's what I spent the past few months doing.
You wake up in the morning reciting pieces of it like.
No, because nothing sticks. I couldn't tell you one thing. Probabilistic. You use that a lot.
That's a great word.
Probably it is a good word. I'm going to use it more myself.
Yeah.
Salubrious. But
Salubrious,
Everybody
Lubrious.
has words
Oh, that's a
salubrious
great
in
word.
your vocabulary for the rest
That's a
of
great
the
word. And I don't mean I'm not demeaning anybody. God bless him, and good for me. I got to do the book. It's my first for Audible. Well, actually, I did one back in around 2004, but I hadn't done any in the interim. And it was you really have to get into harness, don't you? I mean, it's get up and go to work. Even though it's in your own house, you still have to get up and do it.
And for those sorts of jobs, like do you create a character for those, or are you like announcer man?
No, in this case, this was straight pitch. Just me. I did a couple dialects.
3 words.
But no, it's very, for that reason, I did not enjoy it. I was hoping, boy, Audible, I'll get to do fiction. And I get this sales book. Suck it up, do it, hope for the best.
It's like the check cleared, though,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And Greg, what about you? I know you not only are you doing reads and such like that, but you're also doing Cameo, right?
Cameo has really, it's a surprising thing. It's really helped me through the pandemic. Because of the very nature of IRO, more and more, as things started getting more and more serious, as opposed to simply, hi, can you wish me a happy birthday, we're getting married, that sort of thing was usual. It became more and more about, Uncle Iro, please just tell me it's all going to be okay. And as I started to do that, and as Uncle Iro, it also helped me think that, okay, everything is going to be okay. Don't be so, and again, the line from Uncle Iro that it keeps coming back to me again and again and again. My favorite line is, if you look for the light, you can often find it. If you look for the dark, that is all you will ever see. And as we got more and more into the pandemic, it just happened more and more. That was a source of light for me. Just to be able to, honestly, obviously I'm making money off of it, but by helping other people, I was helping myself, I guess. So that to me has been the great gift, and during these odd times in which we find ourselves. And hopefully we will get through soon. And maybe the next time we can all see each other's smiles, which would be kind of awesome. And maybe I can breathe again. I'm ventilating inside.
I will tell you, did anybody watch back last year, I guess it was last year, where we did the StocktonCon online? Did everybody get a chance to watch Greg? So I believe that's still online. But I'm just going to share, Greg made that comment last year, and I had the privilege of moderating. And my wife at the time was, having some family issues and stuff like that. So she was watching it in the next room, and just to see what I was doing. And she heard him say that. She knew nothing about live, nothing at all. But she was like, "Oh my God, that was so moving." So, she was.
That's
so
I
excited.
did, thank you to the writers, and I think that line's from Legend of Forest. The writers wrote that. But that's Iro. Iro is he has transcended just an animated character. He has literally impacted people's lives. Time and again, people come up and they say, "Wow, I was going through this, or I was going through that, and Iro said this thing, around the planet a while, but I'm no more wise than anybody else that's been on this planet for 61 years and is paying attention. But again, Iro has helped other people, and he helps me even now. You know.
So we're gonna start questions saying, but
We'll sit. Great.
Thank you.
So there was just a little drop of knowledge this there. We're at maximum capacity, so we're gonna do this now. Greg, I'm pretty sure it's your birthday on Monday, right?
Yes. I am
So can
turning
we get a
61.
rousing rendition of Happy Birthday for Greg? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Greg. Happy birthday to you.
With the cake? I assumed there would be cake.
That's in the green room.
Oh, okay, good.
How's it feel to be 45?
Well, it feels like 61.
All right, so who's got a question? Anybody raise your hand, please stand up and ask a question.
Do we need to?
You just address it them. I will do my best to repeat it, or we'll figure it out.
Okay. So my question.
Hey, not so loud.
Okay, my question was about the future of voice acting because I've been noticing for a lot of animated or bigger animated series stuff, for things produced by Marvel and Disney, that they started using celebrities in the place of voice actors. And do you think that's going to start affecting the voice acting industry as a whole?
So that's where we're going with this panel now. Okay. All right. Okay.
Let me tell you something, young man. That left the terminal a long time ago.
Yeah. I personally have been straight up replaced on 5 different projects, like after production, to be swapped with a celebrity. It sucks, but it's part of the industry, and it's not going away. And I think particularly for feature film, and now in a large part for AAA video games, like that's kind of where it's going. So you just gotta have to deal with it. Like I can't become Chris Pratt. Like I just can't. I have to deal with it. I can work on what I can work on, which is being really good at what I do in the booth, and that's it. I can't work on being famous.
Amen.
You can blame, actually, when you think about it, you can blame Aladdin and Robin Williams for that. Because when you really think about it, you look back at Beauty and the Beast, for example, Disney's Beauty and the Beast, there were no major celebrities. But once they went with Robin Williams and Aladdin, then they were doing Mel Gibson and Pocahontas, and it's that train left the station.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Is it in fact has the pandemic made it even easier since, like you said, they can go from their bedrooms to their living room, record it, and never have to leave the house, and that way you got Tom Hanks up for 2 hours work.
Well, I think he still gets paid the same amount. So I mean, like just from like a union perspective, like he can get paid the same amount,
Right,
whether he
but
was in his underwear in his home or in an actual studio.
But I don't have to fly him somewhere. I don't have
That's
to drive
true.
to the
Okay.
studio.
Yeah. Okay.
For me, it depends on whether or not you're working solo. For example, if you're doing a video game, you're by yourself no matter where you are. But DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, back in those days, you sat around like a chamber orchestra, with the little green visors and microphones, and people talk, sip coffee, and hang out to lunch together. It was a real nice social affair.
They're the most fun sessions I've ever had. It's ensemble cast recordings. The most fun.
Well, but that's not on the table right now, obviously. And so being able to go to you're wearing your flip-flops into your, a friend of mine, I was teaching voice, and she said, what would be how expensive for a home studio? And I said, and I kind of had a feeling about her. I said, do you have a walk-in closet? She said, yes. And that became her studio. The baffling is unbelievable. It's perfect. So if you have a walk-in closet, maybe you can rent it out.
Man, I was gonna say that's kind of not the best thing to hear, like wanting to get into voice acting, but if people can still keep doing it,
There's
I guess.
plenty of work. Don't get me wrong.
There's
There's
a lot of work.
tons and tons and tons of work. Are you going to be the lead character in a Disney feature film?
Yeah,
Probably not. Yeah. Even doesn't matter how great of an actor you are, a voice actor, probably not.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. What's his next step?
gonna say that's a bit different from person to person. I'd say, you know.
I built my career in a completely different way from most people. I guarantee you it's completely different from these two gentlemen. So yeah, it's hard.
Hey Ross, we probably improved things faster.
Well, that's an excellent idea.
You know, for me, I would say, you really want to work on your Mako impression. I think that's, you know.
All right.
You know, that was my.
Yeah, I don't know. Like my path was I worked for the Air Force as an intelligence officer and stumbled into voice acting in 2013. Quit my job 8 months later, moved to LA, and then that was it.
Well, how do you stumble into voice acting? What was that?
Okay, so to paint the picture, I was on reserve duty because I was still an Air Force reservist. I was sitting in the unit completely by myself on a Saturday because all the active duty people weren't there, and I was talking to a friend of mine on like Google Chat, who was someone I had been in a writing group with, who was trying to write books. And I was like, man, you know what I was going to try? Voice acting. And I'm thinking like anime, games, cartoons, that kind of thing. He's like, well, my company used to hire stuff for like, you know, unsexy corporate stuff from this website. Why don't you give it a shot? And I was a hobbyist musician, so I had gear, I knew how to produce a recording, I knew how to cut things. And I booked the first thing I auditioned for, which again, super typical, is a cartoon panda speaking Arabic to children. Because I had some Arabic knowledge from my Air Force days. And so like I booked the first thing I auditioned for and was like, how do I do that again? And it snowballed so fast that within 8 months I talked to my job and I was like, I need to either quit or go part-time. What would you like? And I went part-time for the next 8 months and then quit completely. So it was just like, what I did is I went the brute force method. I started as a home studio guy, so I was very adapted when the pandemic came out. Because I had been building my own home studio for, you know, almost.
What's your favorite mic?
I use a Sennheiser MKH 416 for,
Wow,
that's pretty much, yeah, that's kind of like the industry standard for promo.
No, because it's not a common voice mic. I mean, you'll come across it in sessions, but
It's a boom mic, like it's a, yeah.
That's what it is. It has this parabolic pattern that comes out. It was used to, you know, to be over out of frame.
Mhm.
And if you get on the right angle of it, we both have kind of medium range voices. So for me,
Yeah, it's nice. I find it doesn't work as well for female voices. I prefer them on like a TLM 103 or I have a U87, I have a U87 that I use for.
keep that for a little case.
Yeah.
You know they're going to be sitting at dinner like.
Right.
What about you, Greg?
I think I use a Neumann. I think is what I use.
So a little one?
Yeah.
Big view.
It's a big one, and we had moved to. I was born in New Mexico. We moved away from Burbank to go back there in February of 2020. Not the best time to be moving. And I'd always figured, I'll just have a little closet there. I'll record my auditions, and I'll fly into LA if I book a gig. And quickly it became clear that I was going to have to build a home studio. And a friend of mine who was an engineer for Disney, I said, what's the absolute, I wanted this done quickly, and he said, here's what you need, blah, 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 and that's the mic that he suggested.
You know, I have to just share something with you very quickly. I'm elderly. I've been around a long, long time. When I came to California in the late '60s, I had occasion to run into a guy named Paul Frees.
Oh,
And
he's
this,
my favorite
I
one
mean,
ever. I love him.
You
And
might
by
have
the
to
way,
explain
and by-
who Paul Frees is.
Paul Frees.
and by the way, yeah, I will. But this thing we're doing right now, referencing about microphones and other actors, I tell you, it's something that you should be aware of. You should be aware of who we're talking about. I'm not giving you an assignment. I'm just saying, if it's in your DNA to be a voice person, then you're like a fan. You're like a Comic-Con fan. You know, you like certain things and you collect things, and you should be that way about the voice business. Really try to know as much about everything that you possibly can. So my lesson is Paul Frees. Look him up. About this big, powerful little guy. Had one of those handlebar mustaches, and he had a voice like this. He did all of the voices, not some, but all of the voices in the original Disneyland. He was everything.
He's a ghost host. Welcome, foolish.
Everything
That's
down
what
there.
Paul
The
Frees.
submarine. But anyway, and he kind of took a fancy to me, and it was very kind to me, and gave me some tips along the way. But the thing that impressed me the most about him, he lived in Tiburon, a very wealthy section of Belvedere, actually, of the Bay Area of San Francisco. And he used to go into his studio studio in his house. And he had a T-line, phone line.
Oh,
and
wow.
He would send his voice to LA, and yet tell people, to say, no, that's not possible.
Like ISDN in the 60s. Wow.
Yeah, but there was a T-line.
Wow.
Basically the same thing. And now we do it and don't even think about it. You can make a studio for $500.
Yep.
And if you learn some of the software, you can be their ISDN equivalent. What's that
Source
called?
Connect.
Source Connect. Fantastic. You can't tell the difference. Sounds like you're right in the studio. So collect names, collect history. It's good. It's a good thing to do. Paul Frees, Frees.
Who else has got a question? Right there, go ahead.
You guys talked about software recordings earlier. What would you say your favorite moment is?
Favorite moment of ensemble?
Sitting in front of Frank Welker
Oh, that's awesome.
for 3 months. I almost had to be hospitalized. Frank Welker is hands down, to me, he's God. Jim Cummings is up there, but Frank can do things with his vocal cords that defy belief. He used to sit behind me and do Gregory Peck just to make me laugh. Terry, how are you? And I'd fall on the floor. He just had that. He could push my button. But one of the things that he did that I still defies belief, he did a styrofoam cup of coffee, a pencil punched through the styrofoam, and the coffee leaking out. He did it all with his mouth. Wow. Everything. So, I mean, he takes it into sickness. He really does. Frank can do anything. And again, another good name to know. When you look him up, you will not believe the voices he's done. Welker, Frank Welker. And to work with him, those were my favorite sessions.
There you go.
I think probably on Avatar, on Samurai Jack, we were very rarely were we all together. The same with Avatar. But on Clone Wars, we almost always, everybody was in the same room. And I think those are my favorite ensemble recordings, and a lot of that was because of Dave Filoni. Usually for animation,
That was the British.
Dave Filoni, yeah, creator, not creator of the show, but big Star Wars guy. George Lucas he does a lot now, certainly. And we would go in, and usually for a 30-minute animated show, they book you for 3 hours, but generally you're out of there in an hour. Except when Dave Filoni is in the room, because he does his homework. I mean, he is literally working encyclopedia of all things Star Wars, and he had, the renderings of every character, and not just the renderings of every character. He would come up to you and talk to you for 20 minutes about your character's backstory. Like I was playing a very old Jedi named Tera Sunube, and this was his scene. He said, let me explain. Okay, Tera Sunube is very old, Greg. Now he's not as old as Yoda, but let me put it this way. When Yoda was a senior, Tera Sunube was a freshman. And it would just go on and on. It was almost you didn't even want to record. You just wanted to hear more about this amazing universe that he would be creating. So hands down, Clone Wars favorite ensemble.
I do a show that we're in the 4th season of now called Lego City Adventures on Nickelodeon. It comes on like Rick and Morty, SpongeBob, and that was basically, again, I said I'm relatively new in LA. I've only been there for 5 years. That was my first network animation that I ever did, and I remember walking into the room for the first day, and it's like Roger Craig Smith is in there, who's Ezio Auditore, as well as Captain America and Sonic the Hedgehog. The voice of Johnny Bravo is there. The voice of the Hulk is there. The voice of Dexter from Dexter's Lab is there. And I'm like looking around, like, did you dial the right number when you called me in here? Because like I am so junior to all these guys, and those are just my favorite because I will just sit there and learn for 4 hours. Like Greg said, they book you for 4 hours, and it depends on how much we all screw around. You're either going to take 30 minutes or you're going to take 3.5 hours. And it's just like everybody's riffing off each other, and you didn't understand what talent really was until you sat in front of those people and saw them work. Actually, like, I mean, you get enough of it when you watch the end of the show, but when you see them at work, you don't understand what talent is until you see it. And like, it was a privilege to get to learn from all those folks for all the episodes I've done, and thank God we're still going. So
It's funny you should mention the voice of Johnny Bravo, Jeff Bennett, because I
That's awesome.
And bastard always won.
So
I see him again.
I have a funny Jeff Bennett story. Well, actually, I haven't told him this yet, so he hasn't been inside my head here. But the character I do in Lego his name is Duke, and he has this signature shoulder roll where every time he shoulder rolls, he makes a noise. And in my head, I was like, oh, I'm just basically gonna do the Johnny Bravo. Right? Every time. So like, but you know, when you do a bad impression, it's just a new character. So that's what I basically did. Right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Exactly right.
Absolutely.
Jeff is in session with me, has been in session with me, and I never told him, like, I basically just ripped this from you. And his character is doing a shoulder roll in imitation of my character. And the director gets on and is like, hey, can you just do it like Joe does it? And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like telling Johnny Bravo to do Johnny Bravo like someone who's not Johnny Bravo. Someday I'll get to tell him that mental story. I don't know why they tell him that.
You know, that's really not uncommon either. There was a great story when I was in LA. Casey Kasem. Casey Kasem was, all right. He was a great man. He was a wonderful man. And he had a voice like this. Hi, this is Casey Kasem. And American Top 40. And he syndicated this thing for years and years and years. He was a very wealthy man. And, but like all working actors, you don't quit working. You have a job. I had a series for a while, and I would still take breaks from, you know, whenever you had a break, run off and do an audition, because you never know when the other one's going to end. And one day to Bell Sound, there was a call, get over there to Bell Sound. A guy is looking for a Casey Kasem kind of voice. Now, this is the kiss of death. When they ask for a Casey Kasem type of voice, a Mike Bell. Right? Remember Mike Bell doing Butter? Parquet, Butter. Every year they said, Mike's going to get fired. And so 10,000 guys would do that voice and then always go back with him. But, so where was it?
Bell Sound with Casey Kasem.
Oh, yeah, so Bell Sound. Thank you. Someone's paid attention. So this call went out, and Casey walks into the studio. And he's a little guy, bring the mic down for him. The guy on the other side of the glass, some young ad guy, says, okay, you want to give me a read? And Casey reads the thing, and he says, okay, actually, we're kind of looking for a Casey Kasem kind of stuff. And Casey said, I am Casey Kasem. And the guy absolutely turned white. He was so embarrassed. He said, thank you, Mr. Kasem. And of course, he didn't cast it.
Of course.
He was too embarrassed to do it.
And did he keep his job after that?
I don't know what happened to the young man, but Casey, you know, it wasn't even a speed bump for him. I'm going to tell a quick story about doing a Japanese game. Okay? You're talking about this wonderful thing that you're involved in. I was asked to come to a localization. Localizations basically mean they're existing video games from some other country, some other language, a lot of Japanese, and they bring that over here, and then you have to, you do the English voice. And there's a certain skill to it because you can't, you don't want their mouths moving if yours isn't. So it's kind of challenging, but it's fun. And it was my first one, and the Japanese, God love them, man, they are so hierarchical. They have a guy who's like the sensei, the producer, and then he has a bunch of assistants around, all guys, and they're all at his beck and call. And then they would try to give me a direction. And they said, okay, you're going to replace this guy, somebody Mako, like, you're going to replace this guy's voice. Before you do it in English, I want you to hear how he sounds in Japanese. He's a warrior. And so I listened to the track, and it was, and I thought, okay, it's Bushido, I get that. Watched the Fury movies, and I did it. And then they said, okay, this next character is a little ancient woman in the village. She's very weak and she's very, very frail. I said, well, can I hear the Japanese actor? And so they played it for me, and the voice was, that was a great experience. I learned something invaluable about the Japanese. I was in a hurry to leave after the session was over, and producer calls me and says, "Are you out of your mind?" I said, "What?" He said, "Do you realize what you did? You took their business cards and didn't even look at them." I said, "Well, I was going to look at them when I get home." No, he said, "You don't understand. To the Japanese, that business card is emblematic of their life. That's I mean, everything in their success story is wrapped up in that business card. And you don't just look at the one, you turn it over. And as you're looking at it, you make eye contact. Wow, great." Just a little lesson about cross-culture brown nosing.
We got time for a couple more questions if anybody has in them. Okay, I saw 3 hands go up. We'll try to do all 3. We're going to go star in the back. We'll go here. We'll go here. That's the order you raise. So stand up real tall and say your piece.
It still is. You know, in Mako, you know, I think it's so amazing that it ends up being me, you know. And usually when you fill in for another role or an actor dies, is fired, and they hire someone else, you know, the other Darren, as it were, all you have to do is worry about the character, trying to sound like the way the character originally sounded. Now, the difference with Mako is I not only need to sound like this iconic character named Iroh, but I have to honor and sound like the iconic character that an actor that voiced it. So it's not only Iroh on my shoulder, but I've got Mako on the other shoulder. And so yeah, it's a heavy responsibility. When we were, it was the next to last Samurai Jack recording session, and I walked into Cartoon Network and signed in, and I noticed above me someone had written Mako, and I thought, well, that's a sick joke. Well, what's up with that? You know, I walked back to the green room and I'm waiting, and there's, you know, Gendy Tartakovsky, the creator of the show. And he says, "Oh, Greg, I want you to come over and meet somebody." It's a woman there with a teenage son. I said, "Okay, sure. This is Mako's daughter, and this is his grandson, also named Mako." And I'm going, I wish you'd told me this before the session, because you know it's one thing to sound like a character, but no, I have to sound like this is this woman's father we're talking about. This is this grandfather. This is a heavy duty situation. And I'm going, I hope she's not offended. I hope she likes it. You know, fortunately we go into the session, and I'm situated as such that I cannot see her on the other side of the glass. But Phil Lamar, who plays Samurai Jack, could, and he tells me afterwards that the minute that I started to speak, Mako's daughter just leans back in her chair, just does this. And then when I walked out of the session, very, very worried, you know, she's not going to like it, she comes up to me with tears in her eyes, and she says, "Thank you so much. It was like he was in the room with me again." And I think, I couldn't help but think at that time, I get emotional still thinking about myself, because I would give, there's nothing I wouldn't give to hear my own father's voice again, even if it was an impression of my father's voice, just to hear that, and that I was able to give Mako's daughter that is, I think, the greatest thing I will ever do as a voice actor. I don't think I will ever do.
All right. In the interest of time, we're going to go to you. Go ahead.
I just want to know how you guys feel about the evolution of fandom. Joe, you just really got into voice acting. Well, Ray and Joe, you guys have been doing this for a long time. You went from smaller conventions, very few smaller conventions, or even more conventions to larger conventions, to hamper this note, to email, to people actually connecting to you directly through like whatever medium, sex medium you have. So I just want to know your take on just how when you first started in fandom to how fandom is nowadays.
The evolution of fandom. Is what you,
Yeah.
okay.
The evolution of what, please?
Fandom.
Fandom.
Oh,
It's like interacting with fans.
Joe, you want to start?
I mean, you know what? Like you mentioned, my experience is fairly narrow as opposed to, you know, it's like it's been interesting to see the difference for me, going from like not being well known to being well known, and how that has like progressed. But ultimately, like you talked about connection with fandom. That has been my favorite part. Like I get to see a ton of different perspectives from people that I don't interact with in everyday life. I've learned a ton from fans about like what it is to be in somebody else's shoes. I think it's really kind of like widened my perspective of what it means to be human, like all the stories we tell each other. So that's kind of my experience with fandoms, just getting to know so many people, even on like the micro scale for 10 seconds at a table. I get to know a little piece of everybody's story, and that's really, really magical.
Terry and Greg, you guys want to address that at all?
Go ahead, Greg.
Oh, after you.
Fandom. I need to think of Stu, give me a brief moment.
For me.
All right, I got it.
You got it? I agree with Joe. The cons, and I'm so glad that we're back, even with our masks on. It's so nice to be back in the room with the people again. And that to me, before, especially with Iro was a great character. I didn't realize what an impactful character he was until I started meeting people. And people would talk about it. And it's like, and not only that, you get to go to interesting places, you get to meet interesting people. It is by far and away my favorite part of my gig, actually. And I think that I hope that the cons and the fandoms are just going to grow larger. I mean, I think Avatar is certainly starting to approach Star Wars Marvel levels in the amount of fandom. I mean, I think it's not out of the question that we might eventually see Avatar cons simply devoted to Avatar: The Last Airbender. Anyway, knock on wood.
How do I get on that?
How do you get on Avatar?
Yeah.
Well, the show ended 15 years ago, so
Again, they laid the dollar short.
However, Avatar Studios, Nickelodeon, starting Avatar Studios, which is dedicated to simply producing Avatar content.
Wow.
So hey, may not might have another show
In LA.
In LA, yeah.
And there's another thing to come back around to. How do I get into this business? It's not going to happen in Stockton. Lovely city, nice place. It's just not going to happen here. It's not going to happen in San Francisco, really. You've got to be in the thick of it. You've got to have an agent who is constantly sending you out, because there's so much work in LA that the odds are in your favor. See what I mean? And you're playing a numbers game. So if you get to do 1,000 auditions, you're gonna come away with having landed some. And the thing about the fans and dealing with fans, I agree with Greg about the effect that fans can have on you when you're not prepared for it. You do a session. I did DuckTales. That's 30 years ago. I've sort of forgotten about it.
I haven't forgotten the song. The theme song is in my head forever.
Oh, I know, it's the best. It's the best. But when you're sitting there, you're writing an autograph to somebody, and this one big guy came to me. I think it was in Louisville or someplace, and he came up to me, giant of a man, young guy, and he said, very soft spoken, he said, I just want to thank you. I said, yeah, what did I do? And he said, you guys were the one escape I had as a kid, because I was big and awkward and everybody thought I was stupid and they picked on me. I said, you were a victim of bullying? He said, oh, it was terrible. It just, I would be crying almost every day after school. But he would run home and watch DuckTales. And when you look at it through his lens, you understand psychologically what that meant for him. It just took his mind off his troubles and gave him some escape. And that's the beautiful thing about what we do. And sometimes we lose sight of it. Clearly Greg hasn't, but I admit to having lost sight of it until I started doing comic books. People say thank you.
Yeah, it makes all the difference in the world. It really does, actually, face to face. And it was nice doing the panels virtually, because at least it was a way of keeping all this alive. But cons are like nothing else in the world. There is a radical sort of freedom that exists only in cons, where you are free to be whoever you are.
next to him,
You know?
believe me. He's
Well, on that, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to get to it because we're out of time. We got to clear the room. But I guarantee you, if you go up to their booths, you can ask them the question, they will answer, right? You promise?
Buzz, can I have 10 seconds?
You have to. Well, I was going to say 10 seconds. Closing words.
No, just this has nothing to do with any of the stuff we're talking about. But I have to plug it, okay? Because that sweet lady over there, my girlfriend Katya, say hi, Katya. We do a podcast that came out of the pandemic. She and I and the third friend, when we couldn't see each other, we just got on Zoom and did a podcast. And we were putting a lot of effort into it. So I'm going to give it a cheap plug. And would you please check it out and hit subscribe? Okay? It's a vicious, competitive business, especially when you're not getting paid. But if you could look at just eyeball it and give us a hit, it's called 3 Homies, the number 3, HOMEYS.com. Everybody's writing it down. Okay, good. But if you just peek at it, I mean, it won't be a waste of time. You get to at least see Katya, and I'd appreciate it if you do it. Okay? Thank you.
And Greg and Joe, what do you guys got going on? Where can people follow you and find out what you're up to?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter, and then you might unfollow me on Twitter very quickly, depending on what sort of mood I'm in that day. But I'm also obtuse, so I can be a little salty from time to time, certainly on Twitter. Coming up on October 1st on Disney Channel and Disney Plus and Disney platforms, The Ghost and Molly McGee. I am a regular on that show, and I hope you watch it. The Ghost and Molly McGee.
What is that? What's that?
You know what? They have not dropped my character, so I'm not going to tell you. They know, I'm in it, but no one said who I'm playing, and so I won't tell you who I'm playing, except that maybe I'm playing a ghost named Bartholomew.
Fair enough. All right.
I'm pretty much the only Joe Zieja out there. So.
And you have a cool website.
I do have a cool website.
I thought your website.
Yeah, I stream, so you can find me on Twitch, YouTube. I do all the cool, trying to my best to pretend I'm a millennial kind of thing. So yeah, really, Joe Zieja, it's not hard to find me.
Let me ask you guys something. You're big Twitter people?
Sure.
Unfortunately.
5 years ago, Telltale asked me if I would be interested in doing Inspector Gordon for their Batman. I said, of course, we're crazy. So I had done a number of shows there. And the new guy took over, and I sent my audition, and everybody was real excited. That's perfect, that's the right book. And I didn't get it. And the reason I didn't get it was because I had no Twitter following.
Yeah, social media has kind of become a part
But
of
be
the cast. Part of the cast.
Be aware of this.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of this. I've been in the business 50 years, and I didn't get cast because I don't have a Twitter follower.
It's unfortunate.
It's a new world. Be brave.
It's a scary new world.
Can I get a huge round of applause?
Thank you for coming, everybody. Enjoy your convention.
They're all up on the fan deck. They're all up on the fan deck. You can go up there and take some time, get a picture, get a signature, ask your questions. And again, thank you. You guys were a great audience. I
You really were.